This is a little practice video for flamenco dance from fiddle time runners or viola time runners. It's from the second part of the book, and it uses a new finger position. So at the beginning of the piece, you'll notice right after the clef, so treble clef if you're a violinist or alto clef if you're a violist, there are three sharp signs. So the things that look like hashtags. That tells us that we're using A major. But for violinists, it's not the first part of A major that starts on the A string. We've got to use the lower part of A major. So our low A on either the viola or the violin, it's going to be G string, and then the next note up is A, because we always go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So the first finger on the G string. I'm going to play this with my normal fingering, and you're going to find it doesn't sound like a regular major scale. Doesn't sound quite right. So what we need to do is, in the first part of the book, we moved our second finger from having a gap between 1 and 2 and second finger being close to 3. We moved it back down close to the first finger. Now we have to have two gaps. So we have a gap between the first finger and the second finger, and then we have a gap between the second finger and the third finger, and finger 4 goes right next to number 3. So it's going to sound like this. And we're back to a nice major scale. So those are the notes that we're going to need in playing flamenco dance. Now I want you to look at the music. So you've got those three hashtags at the start, three sharp signs they're called, and that tells us what key we're in. We're also going to look at the fact that we're in 3/4, so we're counting 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 in the bar. And if you notice, we don't start on the first count of the bar. So it's going to go da 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 da, and the first long note, the minim, is that's the white one, the one that's not coloured in. If you're not sure, that's the first note that's going to be important. Now, if you look at the start of the piece, you'll see you've got a gap at the beginning where there's an introduction. But if you look, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bars, and that's a phrase, and then there's a rest. And then there's, including the rest, the bar with the rest, when there's two black notes, two crotchets after that, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bars. So you've got two 4-bar phrases, which together make a sort of question and answer 8-bar phrase, twice as long. So that, it's really cunning. Basically, that's all you need to learn for the whole piece. So I'm going to play you this, these first 8 bars, and if you look at the next 8 bars, they're exactly the same. And if you look at the next 8 bars, they're not exactly the same because they go onto the D string, but you do the same finger pattern, and again. And then there's some pizzicato bits on open strings, and then you do the first bit again, and then there's a little phrase at the ending. So the first 4-bar phrase, if you can look at the shape, it generally goes up and then it goes down. So it's almost just going to go without any rhythm. So we go all the way up to the 4th finger, I'm afraid. So 1, gap 2, gap 3, close 4. But there's a little tricky bit in the 1, 2, 3, 4th bar of the piece. That's the 3rd bar that you actually play any notes in. You've got a little 4 marked, it's that bar, and we go straight from the 4th finger to the 2nd finger, D to a B, and then we go back up to the 3rd finger, which isn't a C now, it's a C sharp, because we've got this high 3rd finger. So we're going to go another one of those. So the last bar of that phrase is really easy, it just goes down. And the first bit's really easy. Make sure you do the long note. But the next 2, 3 notes are a little bit tricky, so we've got to make sure that we do C sharp, D with the fourth finger, so it's not an open D, it's the fourth finger, and then the B, so 3, 4, 2, and then a 3. C sharp, D, B, C sharp, 3, 4, 2, 3. So you might need to practice that on its own and then put it together. And that's the first phrase. So pause the video and practice that little bit. And then if you look at the next part, sorry, I didn't give you time to pause, but if you look at the next part, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, the next 4 bars. And they again do a shape that goes up and then down, but this time it doesn't go all the way up to the fourth finger, it only goes up to the third finger, and it's actually easier, there's no jumping, so it just goes. So that's A, A, B, 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 C sharp, which is the third finger, B, A. And remember, our A is not our A string, it's the first finger on the G, so 1, 1, 2. And then you can put them together, and so you get this. We'll do it so you can see my fingers a bit better. And that is basically all you need to learn, because it repeats itself a bit quieter, because the first version is forte, that means loud, and the second version is mezzo piano, which hopefully you know means fairly quiet. And then you do it on the D string, so just so that you know, it sounds like this. So it's just the same finger pattern. And then you've got the pizzicato bit, which you probably shouldn't need much help with because it's just open strings. If you have the old edition, you might have 2 notes marked, which is double stopping, in which case they'll still be open strings, but it'll sound like this. That's a bit tricky to do. If you've got the new edition, they've taken it out, so you've only got 1 note. You might need to practice going from the bow. Hold the bow like a monkey, get that finger out. And then at the end of the pizzicato section, you've got 2 Ds and an A, and then you've got to get the bow back in 3 counts. So D, D, A, find the bow, play. That's worth practicing. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. That's worth practicing, just so you can practice getting the bow back. You can do pizzicato with your bow hold and just stick the finger out, but we've got quite a long passage, so it's worth swapping. And then you've got this phrase at the very end, which just has, after your first finger A, you've got another long note, and then you've got this rhythm on the A string. So if you're not sure, you've got a dotted crotchet. That's a black note with a dot after it, and then you've got 3 quavers. So it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Well, it's not 4, it's 1. So it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. And you've got a long E on the D string, so it's the first finger on the D before that. And I'd suggest that you practice from that, because you're going to use a down bow on that note, and the next phrase starts on an up bow, but it's more natural to start with this one. So 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And we're going to take the bow off on the last one, so we're going to do whoomph, like that. So we've got 1. So listen again. Make sure you start on an up bow. And if we start with the note before. And and then if you practice those bits, you should be able to play all the way through Flamenco Dance.